The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars and countless worlds. Some shone with power and wealth. Others lived quietly, hidden in the shadows of greater empires. One such world was Cathari, a small planet covered in green valleys, silver, rivers and cities built of crystal and stone. The Cathari people were gentle, soft-spoken, and kind. They were not warriors. They were dreamers, artists, and healers. Their lives were filled with music and light, not blood and fire. But peace is fragile in a galaxy ruled by strength. It began with whispers of war machines, metal armies built by an empire that cared for nothing but conquest. The Cathari heard of planets burning, of civilizations erased as if they had never existed. They prayed those shadows would not reach them. But prayers could not stop the storm. The invaders came without warning. Dark ships appeared in the skies, blotting out the stars. Their engines roared like thunder as they descended. Machines poured onto the land, tall, armored, glowing with red eyes. They had no mercy, no voices, no souls. They did not speak demands. They did not ask for surrender. They only destroyed. Cities fell in hours. Crystal towers shattered like glass under burning fire. Fields that once sang with color turned black with ash. Families ran, but the machines hunted them with perfect, merciless precision. The Cathari tried to resist. They had defenders, a small planetary guard, but their weapons were weak. Their ships were light craft meant for travel, not war. Their soldiers had courage, but courage without strength could not stop the tide. And so, the Cathari people did what they had never done before. They cried out for help, from hidden bunkers, from deep caverns. Their leaders activated ancient communication towers. A signal was sent, rising out of the atmosphere, breaking into the void. It carried across the cold darkness, leaping from system to system. It was a simple message, spoken with voices trembling but clear. We are the Cathari. Our world is under attack. We have no strength to defend ourselves. Please, if anyone hears this, we beg for aid. The signal echoed into the endless stars. And for many days, no answer came. In the grand halls of the great empires, the message was heard, but ignored. The noble houses, the merchant guilds, the warrior clans, they all listened, but none lifted a hand. To them, Cathari was small, unimportant, not worth the risk. Why lose soldiers and ships for a world that gave no profit in return? Some laughed at the message. Others turned away in silence. The Cathari felt despair grow heavy in their hearts. They had asked for help, but the galaxy was deaf to their cries. In their darkest hour, it seemed they would be abandoned. But the signal did not stop traveling. It wandered farther, beyond the great empires, beyond the borders of those who called themselves civilized. It reached a place few dared to speak of, a world the galaxy whispered about in fear. Earth. The Cathari had heard of Earth only in rumors. A cursed planet, some said. A death world, others whispered. Its gravity crushed bones. Its storms destroyed continents. Its lands were filled with predators, creatures of claw, venom, and fang. But above all, it was feared for its people, the humans. Other species called them reckless, violent, unpredictable. They said humans fought like beasts, survived where no one else could, and rose stronger from every tragedy. Many called them monsters wearing the shape of men. And yet, when the message reached Earth, the humans did not ignore it. In control, rooms deep beneath their world's surface, leaders and soldiers listened to the Cathari's plea. They heard the desperation in those trembling voices. They saw the images of fire and death sent with the signal, and they remembered. Humans remembered what it was like to be weak, to be hunted, to call for help, and hear only silence. They remembered centuries of war on their own soil, when no one came to save them but themselves. They knew the taste of abandonment, and they would not let another world suffer it alone. For reasons the galaxy could never understand, Earth responded. Across the stars, a new message was sent back to Cathari. A voice firm, steady, unshaken by fear, spoke into the darkness. This is Earth. We received your call. We stand with you. In the bunkers of Kethari, the people wept. At last, someone had answered, yet they did not know whether to feel hope or fear. For to call upon Earth was to call upon the most dangerous world known to the galaxy. Would they be saved by monsters or protected by guardians? No one knew. But one truth was certain. The galaxy's most dangerous world had heard the call, and Earth was on its way. The Kethari waited. Days passed in silence after the humans' message reached them. Their people huddled in caves and mountains, unsure if the voice they heard was real or only a desperate dream. Some prayed the humans would come. Others whispered that asking for aid from Earth was a mistake, that they had called monsters into their world. The elders remembered old stories told in the stars about the cursed planet called Earth. It was said that no sane traveler set foot there. Its gravity was heavier than most worlds, crushing bones that were not strong enough. Its oceans churned with storms that swallowed ships whole. Its deserts burned with fire, its mountains froze with death. On Earth, even the air and water could kill. And yet, despite all this, life had flourished there. Not weak, fragile life, like on other planets. No, the creatures of Earth were made of iron will and endless hunger. Wolves that hunted in packs, birds that crossed oceans on wings, tiny insects that carried poison strong enough to kill giants. To the rest of the galaxy, these animals were nightmares, but to humans, they were only neighbors. That was the first thing that made humans terrifying. They had grown among monsters and become something more fearsome still. The Kethari had seen recordings of humans before. Strange creatures, two-legged, bare-skinned, with eyes that burned like storms. They smiled too easily, laughed too loudly, and fought with a madness that no other species understood. The galaxy called them reckless, unpredictable, dangerous. Every empire, every alliance, had learned the same lesson. Never provoke Earth unless you were prepared to bleed. Humanity's history was a long chain of wars, disasters, and struggles, and yet somehow they always survived. Where other species broke under pressure, humans only hardened. Where others gave up, humans began again. The Kethari could not imagine such lives. Their people had never known true war. They had never watched their world burn. To them, the humans sounded less like saviors and more like fire itself. Beautiful, powerful, but uncontrollable. So when the humans' message came, "We stand with you," the Kethari were torn between hope and fear. Then one evening, their skies changed. The invaders had been patrolling above, their black ships spreading terror like shadows. But now new shapes entered orbit. They were not the golden fleets of noble empires, nor the elegant crafts of galactic guilds. These ships were scarred and brutal. Their hulls bore the marks of countless battles, scorch marks, dents, patches where old wounds had been sealed. They were not ships made for beauty. They were ships made for war. And upon their blackened steel one symbol glowed bright, the crest of Earth. The Kethari watched from the ground in awe and dread. "They came," whispered one child. "The monsters came." But the humans did not descend with threats. They did not roar with pride. They came with silence, predators stalking the battlefield. Inside one of the bunkers, the Kethari Council listened as a transmission came through. The screen flickered, and a human appeared. His armor was heavy, his face lined with scars, his voice steady as stone. "People of Kethari," he said. "We are humanity. We heard your call. We will fight beside you." The Kethari leaders trembled. "But why?" one of them asked. "Why risk yourselves for us? We are not strong. We are not rich. We have nothing to give." The human looked at them for a long moment. His eyes carried storms, but his words were calm. "Because you asked." For a time, the Kethari did not know how to answer. They were used to the galaxy turning away from them. They were used to being forgotten, left to fend for themselves. And now, the most feared people of all were standing at their side. Not for profit, not for glory, but simply because they had been asked. Hope began to stir where despair had rooted deep. But hope was fragile, and doubt still lingered. Some Cathari whispered in fear. What if the humans bring more destruction than the machines? What if their war consumes us all? They had seen the scars on those ships, the cold look in those human eyes. To trust them felt like handing their world to fire. And yet, fire was better than silence. Fire could burn away the darkness. That night, as the humans began moving their fleets into position, the Cathari watched from the mountains. Dropships broke the clouds, descending like thunder. Engines shook the valleys as machines of Earth touched down. Armored vehicles, weapon batteries, supply crates that turned villages into fortresses. The humans walked among them, towering armored figures with weapons slung across their backs. They moved with purpose, with the calm of predators who had done this 100 times before. And though the Cathari trembled, though their hearts feared these strange, dangerous allies, a strange comfort also grew. For the first time since the invasion began, the machines had something to fear. The galaxy's most dangerous world had answered, and humanity had come. The first dawn after the humans landed was unlike any the Cathari had ever seen. Their valleys no longer echoed only with birdsong and rivers. Now they shook with the deep rumble of engines, the sharp clang of steel, and the strange voices of humanity. From the caves and shelters, the Cathari people crept out to watch. Their eyes widened as they saw the soldiers of Earth. The humans walked tall in heavy armor, their boots leaving marks in the soft earth. Their faces were shadowed by helmets, and strange weapons rested across their shoulders. The Cathari whispered, among themselves, "They look like iron giants." "Not giants," another corrected softly. "Predators." And yet there was no cruelty in the way the humans moved. They did not push the Cathari aside nor claim their land as their own. Instead, they began to work, fast, efficient, focused. In one ruined village, the humans raised defenses. Broken. Houses became bunkers, fields turned into landing pads, metal walls grew where once there were only stones. The Cathari watched in awe as machines from Earth unfolded like living beasts. Vehicles rolled out with wheels larger than a Cathari child. Drones buzzed into the skies, scanning the horizon. The air filled with the scent of fuel and fire. The Cathari people were used to beauty. Their world had been filled with gentle creations, gardens, sculptures, shimmering lights. But this was a different kind of beauty. Harsh, powerful, built for survival, and for the first time the Cathari felt something stronger than fear. They felt safety. Soon after, the invaders returned. Dark ships cut through the clouds, their engines screaming. The metal soldiers of the machine army poured down again, their red eyes glowing, their weapons blazing. They marched without hesitation, crushing everything in their path. The Cathari cried out, retreating once more to their caves. They were certain the humans would run too. After all, the machines were countless, merciless, unstoppable. But the humans did not run. The soldiers of Earth stood at the front lines. Shields were raised, weapons locked into place. They moved with the calm of hunters who had seen worse. And when the first machine fired, the humans roared. The battlefield exploded with fury. The humans' weapons sang, thunderous rifles spitting, fire, rockets screaming into the sky, cannons pounding like hammers of the gods. Where the machines advanced, humans charged. Where the machines struck, humans struck harder. The Cathari, watching from a distance, could not believe their eyes. Their gentle hearts had never seen such ferocity. The machines that had crushed their armies now faltered against this wall of steel and flesh. One human soldier ran forward, a rocket launcher on his shoulder. A machine turned its massive cannon toward him. Any other being would have fled, but the human did not. He fired, and the machine exploded in a storm of fire. The blast threw the soldier to the ground, but when he rose, battered and bleeding, he only laughed and shouted for more. To the Cathari it was madness. To the humans it was survival. By the time the sun set, the impossible had happened. The machines retreated, Their black forms disappeared into the forests, leaving only burning wrecks behind. The Cathari came out of hiding, their eyes wide with disbelief. They walked among the ruins where human soldiers tended to the wounded and reloaded their weapons with calm, steady hands. For the first time since the invasion began, the machines had been pushed back. That night, the Cathari Council met with the human commander. His armor was scratched, his face marked with dirt and sweat, but his eyes were sharp, steady. "You fought them," one elder whispered, her voice trembling. "You stood where no one else could. How?" The human looked at her quietly, then answered in simple words, "We've seen worse." The Cathari did not understand how could anything be worse than the machines. But when they looked at the scars on the humans' faces, the fire in their eyes, they realized these people had survived horrors the Cathari could not imagine. And now, those survivors fought for them. As the humans built stronger defenses, the Cathari began to change too. The people who once knew only music and light now carried water to the soldiers. They prepared food. They patched torn clothing. They sang soft songs at night that carried through the camps. The humans listened, in silence, their hard faces softening. Some even smiled. A bond began to grow between the two worlds, fragile but real. Still, fear lingered. The Cathari knew the machines would return, stronger, angrier, and they knew the humans were not gods. They bled. They fell. They could die. But when the Cathari looked at them, they felt something new. Something the machines could never give. Hope. The Bai, galaxy's most dangerous world, had arrived, not as conquerors, but as protectors. And the Cathari understood a truth that would echo through the stars. The humans had not come for power. They had come because someone asked, and that made them more terrifying than war itself. The next morning came with smoke rising from the valleys. The Cathari awoke to the sound of human war machines moving into position. The air was filled with the heavy growl of engines, the clatter of metal, and the sharp orders of human commanders. Children clung to their mothers as they watched from the safety of caves. Elders sat quietly, their crystal-like eyes staring at the horizon. Everyone knew the machines would come back. The question was not if, it was when. The humans knew this too. They did not waste time. They built trenches along the hills. They placed heavy weapons on rooftops. They dug into the soil with armored vehicles, turning soft ground into fortresses of steel. Every action was fast, precise, and calm, as though they had done it 1,000 times before. The Cathari marveled at their strange allies. "They prepare like they already know how this battle will end," one elder whispered. "Yes," another replied softly. "But will they win?" The answer came at dusk. The sky split open as dark ships returned. The invaders poured down once more, their engines screaming across the valleys. The machines landed in the thousands, red eyes glowing, in the shadows of the forests. The Cathari trembled. It was the same nightmare they had seen before. Metal giants marching in perfect lines, their weapons spitting fire, their footsteps shaking the earth. But this time the humans stood waiting. The first shot came from the sky. A machine gun roared from the human lines, its thunder rolling across the valley. The lead machines staggered, sparks bursting from their armored shells. Then came the rockets. Trails of fire streaked upward, slamming into the machines with explosions that shook the mountains. Shards of burning steel rained down. The Cathari gasped. They had never heard such fury, never seen such defiance. The humans did not fight quietly. They fought with a roar, with fire, with madness in their eyes. They charged forward instead of falling back, their weapons flashing like storms. One machine taller than a house stepped into the human lines, its cannon spinning. It fired, tearing holes into the ground. But a squad of humans did not run. They split apart, surrounding it like wolves. Grenades exploded against its legs, rockets slammed into its chest, and finally, one human climbed its back and planted a charge. The blast tore the machine apart, flames reaching into the sky. The Cathari, watching from the caves, cried out in shock and awe. The impossible had happened. The metal giants were not invincible, but victory had its cost. Human soldiers fell. Their bodies lay in the dust, armor cracked, blood staining the soil. The Cathari wept when they saw it. These strangers from across the stars had chosen to fight for them, and now they bled for it. In the middle of battle, one Cathari youth ran forward carrying water to a wounded human. The soldier, face pale, pushed the bottle away and whispered, through broken breath, "Save it for the next one." Even in pain, the human thought of his comrades before himself. That spirit, alien and terrifying, burned into the hearts of the Cathari. The battle raged until the night sky glowed red. The machines pressed again and again, their weapons tearing through walls and trenches. But the humans did not falter. Each time they were pushed back, they pushed forward harder. Each time the machines tried to crush them, the humans answered, with fire and steel. At last, as the stars shone overhead, the invaders broke. Their formations shattered. Their ships pulled back, leaving behind burning wreckage and broken soldiers. The valley fell silent, except for the crackle of fire. The Cathari came down from their caves, their steps uncertain, their hearts racing. They walked among the ruins of the battlefield, where the humans stood tall and unbowed. Smoke rose around them, but their eyes were steady. For the first time, the Cathari realized something powerful. The humans did not fight because they believed they could not die. They fought because they accepted they could, and still chose to stand. That night, the humans buried their dead. The Cathari joined them, singing songs of sorrow, their voices soft like wind through glass. The humans listened quietly, their hard faces softening. Some shed silent tears, though they made no sound. When the last grave was filled, the human commander spoke to the Cathari, gathered around the fire. His voice was heavy but clear. This was only the beginning. They will return, stronger, angrier, but so will we. If you stand with us, we will not let this world fall. The Cathari elders looked at one another. For the first time in their long history, they felt a new fire within them. Fear was still there, yes, but beside it was something brighter, not despair. Not helplessness, but hope. A fragile hope carried by the most dangerous world in the galaxy. The valley was quiet after the battle, but it was not peace. Smoke still rose from the fields, ashes drifted through the air, and the ground was littered with scars of fire and war. The machines had been driven back, but the cost of victory was heavy. The Cathari walked among the ruins with trembling steps. They saw bodies covered in cloaks of cloth, lined carefully by human hands. These were the soldiers of Earth who would never rise again. Beside each one, their brothers and sisters stood silently, helmets pressed to their chests, eyes cold with grief. To the Cathari it was unbearable. These strangers had come from across the stars to fight for them, to protect a world not their own. And now they had given their lives for it. One elder whispered, her voice breaking, "We never asked them to die for us." Another answered softly, "And yet, they did." That evening, the Cathari gathered with the humans around fires built in the ruins of their city. The Cathari sang mourning songs, their voices like crystal, carrying sorrow into the night. The humans listened in silence, their faces hard but their eyes soft. Some shed tears, some simply stared into the flames. When the songs ended, a young Cathari girl stepped forward. She held a small flower in her hand, glowing faintly in the dark. She placed it gently on one of the graves. "Thank you," she whispered. A soldier, of Earth, his armor scratched and his cheek bandaged, bent down and looked at her. His voice was tired but kind. He would have liked that. He always said flowers make even the darkest place brighter. The girl looked up at him with wide, wet eyes. "Why do you fight for us?" she asked. "We are weak. We are nothing." The soldier was quiet for a long moment, then he said, "Because you asked, and because once long ago we were weak too. We know what it feels like, to cry for help and hear nothing." The Cathari did not fully understand, but the weight in his words settled deep in their hearts. In the days that followed, the humans did not rest. They worked even while mourning. New defenses rose from the ashes of fallen villages. Trenches grew deeper, walls higher, weapons sharper. Every soldier knew the truth. The machines would return, and next time, they would come stronger. The Cathari tried to help. Though they were not warriors, they carried water to the soldiers, brought food from the hills, and tended to the wounded with gentle hands. Their healers sang soft songs that calmed pain, wrapping human wounds in shimmering cloth. The humans, who had always known war and steel, found something unfamiliar in this kindness. Some smiled for the first time in weeks. Some laughed quietly at the gentle songs, though not unkindly. Others sat silently, holding the Cathari's gifts as if they were treasures greater than gold. But not all moments were gentle. One night, a storm rolled over the valley. Lightning split the sky, thunder shook the ground, and rain poured down in sheets. In the human camp, soldiers sat in silence, polishing their weapons under the downpour. The Cathari huddled nearby, frightened by the fury of the storm. One young Cathari asked a human soldier, "Does this storm frighten you?" The soldier looked up at the flashing sky and gave a small smile. "This? No. On Earth we have worse. Storms that can tear a city apart, waves that can swallow ships, winds that can lift mountains. If you can survive storms like that, you learn not to fear the sky." The Cathari's eyes widened. They thought of their gentle planet, where storms were soft and rains were kind. For the first time, they realized, these humans were shaped by a world that tried to kill them every day. And instead of breaking, they had become unbreakable, but even the unbreakable carried pain. One evening, a group of Cathari found a human soldier sitting alone, staring at a small picture in his hands. His armor was battered, his face scarred. The picture showed a family, smiling children, a woman holding them close. The Cathari asked, "Are they waiting for you?" The soldier's voice cracked. "Yes. And I don't know if I'll ever see them again." The Cathari fell silent, their hearts aching. They realized then that every human who stood on their soil carried not only weapons, but also love, loss, and sacrifice. They were not just warriors. They were fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters who had left everything behind to answer a stranger's call. When dawn came, the human commander stood before both his soldiers and the Cathari. His armor was scarred, his eyes weary, but his voice was steady. "We are not gods. We can bleed. We can fall. But so long as one of us still breathes, we will not abandon this world. We will fight until the last of us is gone, if that is what it takes." The Cathari listened in silence, tears in their eyes. In that moment, they understood something greater than fear or awe. Humanity was not dangerous because of their weapons, or their strength, or their storms. Humanity was dangerous because of their hearts. They fought, not because they had to, but because they chose to, and that choice came with a cost they were willing to pay, even with their lives. The machines did not rest. They retreated only to gather more strength. Their factories burned hotter, their forges spat out endless armies, and their ships darkened the skies once more. They had been slowed by the humans, but they were not broken. And so, weeks later, they came again. This time, their numbers were greater. Their ships filled the heavens like a storm of steel. The ground shook beneath their march. To the Cathari, it seemed the end had finally arrived. But humanity was waiting. The valley that had once been quiet and green was now transformed into a fortress. Towers of steel and stone lined the hills. Trenches cut deep scars into the earth. Weapons hummed with power, waiting for the enemy to cross their range. The humans had not wasted a single hour. Every moment since the first battle had been spent building, preparing, and sharpening their defenses. The Cathari, too, had changed. Though they were not warriors, they refused to remain helpless. They carried supplies to the front lines. They tended to the wounded, standing unshaken even when shells fell close. They sang songs of courage at night, their voices drifting through the camps like fireflies. The humans called them the light in the dark, and the Cathari, in turn, called the humans the shield of our world. When the machines returned, the first strike was not theirs. The skies above the valley split with thunder. Human warships hidden in orbit fired beams of fire that lit up the night. Explosions ripped through the invaders' fleets, tearing them apart before they could even land. The Cathari watched in awe as the sky burned with war. Where once they had seen only silence and despair, now they saw humans striking back with fury. But still, many ships broke through. The machines landed in the thousands, metal claws digging into the soil, weapons glowing with red heat. The ground quaked as they advanced. The humans met them head-on. The battle was like nothing the Cathari had ever imagined. Cannons boomed across the hills. Rockets streaked through the air, turning night into day. Human soldiers poured from their trenches, firing with precision, shouting with voices full of rage and courage. The machines answered with equal fury. Their plasma weapons cut through walls. Their giant war engines smashed through fortresses. Everywhere the eye turned, fire and death clashed, and yet the humans did not yield. One squad, surrounded on all sides, fought until their last bullet was gone. Then, with knives and bare hands, they tore into the machines until reinforcements came. Another unit, pinned beneath fire, refused to retreat. They called for air support, and from the skies human ships screamed down, blasting the machines into burning wreckage. The Cathari stood on the hills carrying water, pulling the wounded to safety, singing to the dying. They saw the humans bleed, but they also saw something greater. They saw them rise again, no matter how many times they fell. As the battle stretched on, the machines began to falter. For the first time in their existence, they were facing an enemy they could not predict. Machines understood logic, order, precision, but the humans fought with chaos, with creativity, with sheer defiance that no machine could calculate. A trench was lost, but then humans struck from behind, turning defeat into ambush. A fortress fell, but humans detonated it as they retreated, burying hundreds of machines in fire. Every loss became a new weapon, every setback a new trap. The machines had numbers. The humans had something stronger. They had will. By the third day, the tide was turning. The invaders' formations broke. Supply ships in orbit were cut down by human fleets. Ground forces, once endless, began to thin. The humans pressed harder, fighting with a fury that shook even the strongest machines. The Cathari watched in disbelief. The impossible was happening. Before their eyes, the invincible army of metal was being pushed back. On the fourth night, silence fell across the valley. Fires burned in the distance, smoke curled into the sky, but the machines were gone. Their ships had fled. Their armies lay broken in the soil. The Cathari stood among the ruins, hearts pounding, eyes filled with tears. They looked at the humans, who stood bloodied but unbroken, and realized something profound. The galaxy had always called Earth dangerous, cursed, monstrous, but now the Cathari understood the truth. Yes, Earth was dangerous, but not because of cruelty, not because of greed. It was dangerous because no matter the odds, no matter the cost, humans refused to give up. When dawn rose, the Cathari gathered with their allies. The elders spoke with trembling voices. "You saved us. Our world lives because of you." The human commander, weary and scarred, simply nodded. "This battle is over, but the war is not. They will return, stronger perhaps with more than just machines. But remember this, you are not alone anymore." The Cathari bowed their heads, tears falling. They had begun as a weak, forgotten people. But now they had stood beside humanity, the galaxy's most dangerous world, and together they had changed the course of their fate. For the first time since the war began, the Cathari looked at the stars not with fear, but with courage. The smoke of battle had barely cleared when the Cathari city bells rang once more, but this time they did not ring in fear. They rang in hope. For the first time in many generations, the people walked into the open streets with lifted heads. The skies, once darkened by enemy ships, now shone clear and bright. Children laughed, chasing one another through rubble, while elders wept openly, clutching the hands of those who had survived. The machines had been pushed back. The Cathari were alive, and all because humanity had come. The Cathari gathered in the central plaza of their capital, where the great silver spire still stood despite the scars of war. Thousands filled the square, farmers, healers, children, soldiers. They looked upward as human ships hovered above, silent and watchful guardians. At the front of the crowd stood Elder Sira, her staff trembling in her hands. She had seen her people starve, suffer, and nearly fall into extinction. Yet now she looked upon the humans, their armor battered, their banners torn, and felt something stir deep within her soul. She raised her voice, soft but steady. Long ago, the galaxy said Earth was cursed. They said its people were too violent, too wild, too dangerous, but when we cried out for help, none came except them. These monsters, as others named them, gave us their blood, their strength, and their fire. And because of them, we live. Her words carried across the plaza, and a wave of cries followed. We live, we live. The human commander, Captain Elias, stood before the crowd. His face was scarred, his uniform torn, yet his eyes held the same steady calm that had carried his soldiers through the war. He lifted his hand, asking for silence. You call us dangerous, he said, his voice deep and tired, yet full of conviction. And you are right. Humanity is dangerous, but not because we wish for conquest or for power. We are dangerous because we fight for those who cannot. We are dangerous because when others turn away, we step forward. The plaza was still, every Cathari ear straining to hear. Elias's voice grew firmer. Your enemy will return, perhaps stronger, perhaps with new weapons, and when they do, the galaxy will again turn its back on you. But remember this, Earth will not. If you call for aid again, if your voice carries into the stars, humanity will answer. The words struck, like thunder. The Cathari wept openly. Their songs rose into the night, voices trembling but full of gratitude. Children painted the human soldiers' names on the broken walls. Families lit lanterns in honor of the fallen, sending their soft lights floating into the sky. The machines had tried to erase their world, but instead, they had lit a fire the galaxy could not ignore. In the days that followed, messages spread beyond the Cathari system. Other species, small, fragile, forgotten, heard what had happened. Whispers turned into stories, stories turned into warnings. The machines came. The Cathari cried for help. No one answered. Except Earth, and Earth fought like no other could. The galaxy, once dismissive of humanity, now looked at them with new eyes. Some were afraid, others were inspired, and many began to ask the same question. If Earth would rise for the Cathari, would they rise for us too? For the Cathari, life began again. Fields were replanted, children returned to their schools. Songs once lost to fear were sung once more at dawn. Yet the scars of war remained, etched into the land, the walls, and the hearts of the people. But now, when they looked to the stars, they no longer saw only enemies. They saw allies. They saw Earth. One evening, Elder Sira walked with Captain Elias along the edge of the rebuilt plaza. Lanterns swayed above, glowing softly in the night breeze. The elder's steps were slow, but her voice was warm. Your people saved us, she said quietly, but I fear we can never repay you. Elias shook his head. You owe us nothing. Humanity doesn't fight for payment. We fight because no one should stand alone in the dark. Sira closed her eyes, holding back tears. Then may the stars remember your words, Captain, for I will carry them until my last breath. And so, history recorded a simple truth. The galaxy had always feared Earth because of its wild storms, its savage creatures, its endless wars. But the Cathari learned something the others had forgotten. Earth was not dangerous because it destroyed. Earth was dangerous because it endured. Because when others turned away, Earth stood and fought, and when the helpless called for aid, Earth answered.